The sky over Seoul turned dark at 3 in the afternoon. People stopped on the streets and looked up. A massive ship floated above the city, blocking out the sun. It was not like anything humans had ever built. The metal surface shimmered with colors that seemed to move and breathe. Within an hour, news reports showed similar ships over New York, London, Tokyo, and dozens of other major cities around the world. Hyun stood in the military command center, watching the screens with growing concern. He had been an intelligence officer for 8 years, and his training told him something was very wrong. The ships had appeared without any warning. No radar had detected them. No satellites had seen them coming. They had simply materialized in Earth's atmosphere as if they had always been there. "We should scramble fighters," one of the generals said, his voice tight with tension. "And do what?" another officer replied. "We don't know if they're hostile." Hyun watched the debate unfold. His instincts screamed at him to prepare for the worst, but he kept quiet. Junior officers did not speak unless asked. The ships remained silent for 3 hours. Then, all at once, every screen on Earth displayed the same image. A woman appeared, though calling her a woman did not seem quite right. She was tall and elegant, with skin that seemed to glow with a soft light. Her eyes were larger than human eyes, colored like deep purple gemstones. Her hair moved around her head as if floating in water, even though she clearly stood on solid ground. "People of Earth," she said, and her voice carried a musical quality that made everyone who heard it stop and listen. "I am Queen Valara of the Luxarian Empire. We have traveled far to meet you. Do not be afraid. We come in peace, offering friendship and knowledge beyond your imagination." Hyun felt something strange when he heard her voice. A warmth spread through his chest, and for a moment he wanted nothing more than to trust her completely. He shook his head, forcing the feeling away. Around him, other officers stood transfixed, their expressions soft and open. "We invite your leaders to meet with us," the Queen continued. "Let us begin a new era of cooperation between our peoples. Together, we will build a future of prosperity and peace." The broadcast ended. For several seconds, nobody in the command center spoke. Then everyone started talking at once. Hyun noticed that most of the voices were positive, even excited. Only a few people seemed cautious. Across the city, in a government research facility, Yuna stared at her computer screen with confusion. She was a biochemist, and she had been running routine air quality tests when the ships arrived. The moment the broadcast ended, her sensors went crazy. The air contained compounds that had not been there an hour ago. She ran the analysis 3 times to be certain. The compounds were organic molecules, highly complex, unlike anything in her database. They were spreading through the atmosphere rapidly, carried by wind patterns. Yuna sat back in her chair, her mind racing. These molecules should not exist in Earth's atmosphere. They had to have come from the ships. "Did you see the broadcast?" Her colleague Jiho burst into the lab, his face flushed with excitement. "The Queen is beautiful, and she wants to help us. This is incredible." Yuna looked at him carefully. Jiho was usually reserved and analytical. Now he sounded like a teenager talking about his favorite celebrity. "We should be careful," she said slowly. "We don't know anything about them." "What's there to be careful about?" Jiho laughed. "Did you hear her? She wants peace. She wants to share technology with us. Yuna, this could change everything." After Jiho left, Yuna pulled up the air quality data again. The strange compounds had increased in concentration during the broadcast. That could not be a coincidence. Over the next few days, world leaders responded to Queen Valara's invitation. The President of the United States announced he would meet with her. The Prime Minister of Britain said the same. One by one, leaders from every major nation accepted. Only a handful of smaller countries expressed reservations, and their concerns were quickly drowned out by enthusiasm from the international community. Hyun watched the news coverage with growing unease. His commanding officer, General Park, had completely changed his attitude. 3 days ago, he had wanted to shoot the ships down. Now he talked about the incredible opportunity the Luxarians represented. When Hyun suggested they should investigate the aliens more carefully before committing to anything, General Park looked at him with disappointment. "You're being paranoid, Hyun," the general said. "Queen Valara has shown nothing but goodwill. We need to embrace this chance." "Sir, we've only known about them for 3 days," Hyun protested. "Shouldn't we at least verify their claims before—" "That's enough," General Park cut him off. "Your negativity is noted. Focus on your assigned duties." Hyun left the general's office feeling like he had stepped into an alternate reality. These were trained military minds, people who had spent their careers thinking about threats and defense. Now they acted like the aliens were old friends. He started keeping his observations to himself. He noticed that everyone who watched the Queen's broadcasts became more receptive to the Luxarians. The more exposure someone had, the more enthusiastic they became. People who missed the first few broadcasts remained more skeptical, but they were quickly convinced by friends and colleagues to watch. Yuna made a similar discovery in her lab. She collected air samples from different locations around Seoul. The mysterious compounds were everywhere now, but the concentration was highest near where people gathered to watch the Queen's daily addresses. She found the same compounds in the breath samples of volunteers who had watched the broadcasts. When she tried to present her findings to her supervisor, he dismissed them. "You're looking for problems where none exist," he told her. "The Queen has been nothing but transparent with us. Perhaps you should watch her next address. It might ease your concerns." Yuna nodded and left his office, but she had no intention of watching. Whatever those compounds were, they seemed to affect human behavior. She needed to understand how before she exposed herself to more of them. On the 7th day after first contact, the first summit between human leaders and Queen Valara took place in Geneva. The Queen emerged from her ship in person for the first time. Cameras captured her arrival, and billions of people around the world watched. Hyun was in the command center when it happened. He forced himself to look away from the screen, pretending to review reports. Around him, every single person stared at the display with expressions of wonder and joy. Even the most hardened veterans had tears in their eyes. That night, Hyun went home to his apartment and sat in the dark. He thought about his brother Do-yoon, a pilot who had called him that morning, raving about how the Luxarians would teach humanity to reach the stars. He thought about General Park's transformation. He thought about the entire world falling in love with an alien queen they had known for 1 week. Something was very wrong, and he seemed to be one of the few people who could still see it. 3 weeks after first contact, the world had changed in ways that seemed impossible. Queen Valara's influence spread like a virus, infecting minds and reshaping society. Her daily broadcasts reached every corner of the globe. People gathered in parks, stadiums, and public squares to watch her speak. Those who missed a broadcast felt anxious and incomplete until they could see the next one. Hyun stood at the edge of one such gathering in downtown Seoul. Thousands of people filled the plaza, their faces turned toward the massive screen showing the Queen's address. She spoke about unity and progress, her voice washing over the crowd like warm honey. People swayed slightly as they listened, their eyes glazed with contentment. He watched his brother Do-yoon in the crowd. The pilot stood near the front, completely absorbed in the Queen's words. 3 weeks ago, Do-yoon had been a rational man who questioned authority and thought critically. Now he attended every broadcast he could reach. When Hyun had tried to talk to him about it yesterday, Do-yoon had looked at him with pity. "You just need to give her a chance," Do-yoon had said. "Really listen to what she's saying. It will all make sense." Hyun had not stayed to listen. He could feel the pull even from a distance, that strange warmth that urged him to trust and accept. He recognized it now as something artificial, something wrong. But recognizing it did not make it easier to resist. Across the city, Yuna worked late in her lab. She had been running tests for 2 weeks straight, barely sleeping. Her colleague Jiho had stopped helping her after the first few days. Now he spent most of his time at the Luxarian embassy that had been established in a requisitioned government building. "I've been offered a position on their research team," Jiho had told her excitedly. "They want humans to help integrate their technology with ours. It's an incredible opportunity, Yuna. You should apply too." She had declined politely, making excuses about her current projects. In truth, she was terrified of getting any closer to the Luxarians than necessary. Her research had revealed disturbing patterns. The compounds in the air were not just chemicals. They were pheromones, sophisticated biological signals that humans were not meant to encounter. When breathed in, they bound to receptors in the brain, specifically targeting areas associated with trust, attraction, and social bonding. The human body treated these alien pheromones as if they came from a deeply trusted loved one. But that was not the worst part. The pheromones created a dependency. People who stopped being exposed to them experienced withdrawal symptoms, anxiety, depression, irritability, and an overwhelming desire to return to the source. The Queen was not just influencing people, she was addicting them to her presence. Yuna had documented everything carefully, but she had no idea what to do with the information. Every official she might report to had already fallen under the Queen's influence. The media was completely compromised. Even if she published her findings online, would anyone believe her? Would anyone care? A knock on her lab door made her jump. She quickly minimized her research files before calling out, "Come in." A woman entered, someone Yuna did not recognize. She was young, perhaps in her late 20s, with sharp eyes that scanned the lab quickly. "Dr. Yuna?" she asked quietly. "Yes. Who are you?" "My name is Nari. I'm a journalist, or I was, before they shut down my outlet." The woman moved closer, her voice dropping to barely above a whisper. "I've been investigating the Luxarians. Something is wrong with how people are responding to them. I think you know that too." Yuna's heart raced. For the first time in weeks, she felt a glimmer of hope. "How did you find me?" "I've been looking for scientists who might have noticed anomalies. You've been running unusual tests, asking strange questions. Your supervisor complained about you to his colleagues." Nari pulled out a small device from her pocket and pressed a button. "Don't worry. This creates interference. We can't be recorded right now." "Who else knows about this?" Yuna asked. "A few dozen people, maybe. Most are too scared to act. Some have family members who are completely enthralled. They're afraid of being reported as dissidents." Nari's expression hardened. "The Queen has been making suggestions to world leaders. Little things at first. Policy changes, resource allocations, technology sharing agreements, and every single leader has implemented her suggestions immediately." "It's the pheromones," Yuna said. She pulled up her research on her computer. "Look at this. She's essentially drugging the entire human population." Nari studied the data with growing anger. "This is biological warfare." "It's worse than that," Yuna replied. "It's slavery. She's making us want to serve her." Meanwhile, Hyun's situation at the military command center had deteriorated. General Park had assigned him to a new task, identifying potential threats to the Luxarian integration. This meant monitoring people who expressed skepticism or concern about the aliens. The list of names on his screen made him sick. These were not terrorists or criminals. They were teachers, scientists, artists, and ordinary citizens who had simply questioned whether trusting unknown aliens was wise. Now they were being flagged as problems to be solved. "I need you to prioritize the surveillance on these individuals," General Park told him, pointing to several names. The Queen herself has expressed concern about resistance to progress. Hyun stared at his commanding officer. The general he had respected for years was gone, replaced by someone who took orders from an alien without question. "Sir, these people haven't broken any laws. They're just exercising free speech." "Not anymore," General Park said flatly. "The Emergency Unity Act was passed yesterday. Any speech that undermines cooperation with our Luxarian allies is now considered sedition. The Queen needs to know that Earth is united in welcoming her." After the general left, Hyun sat at his desk, trying to process what he had just heard. The government had criminalized disagreement. How had this happened so quickly? 3 weeks ago, they had been a democracy. Now they were rapidly becoming something else. He looked at the list of names again. One caught his eye, Nari, the journalist. The notes said she had been asking dangerous questions about Luxarian biochemistry and its effects on humans. She was marked as a high-priority target. Hyun made a decision that would change his life. He copied the list to a secure drive, then wiped the surveillance orders from his computer. He made it look like a system error. It would buy these people a few days at most, but it was something. That evening, Nari met with a small group of people in a basement apartment. Yuna was there, along with a few others who had noticed something wrong and had the courage to act on it. An older woman named Suji, a former military officer, led the meeting. "We need to face facts," Suji said grimly. "The Queen has taken control of Earth in less than a month. She did it without firing a single shot, without any obvious violence, and most humans think it's wonderful. My research shows the pheromone dependency will only get stronger," Yuna added. "The more exposure people have, the harder it becomes for them to think independently. Eventually, breaking free might be impossible." "Then we need to move fast," Nari said. "I've been documenting everything, but I need help distributing the information. The mainstream media is completely compromised. We need to reach people through underground channels." A young man named Taiyang, an engineer, spoke up. "I've been analyzing the technology the Luxarians have started installing in our cities. They call it an environmental enhancement system. It's supposed to clean the air and improve health, but I think it's actually a pheromone distribution network. They're making sure everyone gets a constant dose." "Then we need to find a way to shut it down," Suji said, "or at least disrupt it long enough for people to clear their heads." Hyun was not at that meeting, but he was about to become part of their cause. As he left the command center that night, military police stopped him. General Park stood nearby, his expression disappointed. "We know what you did, Hyun," the general said. "Deleting surveillance orders, obstructing an investigation. The Queen's security forces are very thorough." Hyun's blood ran cold. "Sir, I can explain. You'll be taken into custody and evaluated. The Queen has psychological conditioning programs that can help people like you overcome your resistance to progress." General Park shook his head sadly. "I thought better of you." As the military police moved toward him, Hyun ran. He did not think, did not plan. He just ran. Behind him, he heard shouts and the sound of boots on pavement. He ducked through alleys and side streets, using every bit of his training to evade pursuit. He knew he could not go home. He could not contact his brother or any of his old friends. In one moment, he had become a fugitive in his own country, but he was free, and that meant he could fight. 6 months had passed since the Luxarians arrived. The world looked different now, transformed by alien technology and alien control. Buildings in every major city bore the distinctive shimmer of Luxarian construction materials. Public spaces featured screens displaying the Queen's image and voice continuously. People wore devices on their wrists that the Luxarians called harmony bands, which supposedly promoted health and well-being. In reality, Yuna had discovered, they released microdoses of pheromones directly into the bloodstream. Hyun lived underground now, moving between safe houses organized by the resistance. The group had grown slowly and carefully. They could not risk recruiting too aggressively. Anyone who had worn a harmony band for more than a few days was likely too far gone to be reached. The withdrawal from the pheromones was severe, and most people would rather submit than endure it. He sat in a cramped apartment with Yuna, Nari, Suji, and several others. They were planning their next move, though their options seemed increasingly limited. The Queen's control over human institutions was nearly absolute now. Governments existed in name only, with the real decisions being made by advisory councils staffed with Luxarian officials and their most devoted human followers. "We intercepted another shipment manifest," Taeyang said, pulling up data on a battered laptop. The engineer had become invaluable to the resistance, using his skills to hack into Luxarian systems. "They're not just bringing technology to Earth. They're taking resources away, rare metals, biological samples, even water, massive quantities of it." "Where are they taking it?" Suji asked. "That's the interesting part. The ships aren't going back to their homeworld. They're going to a construction site in the asteroid belt. I managed to get partial images from a hacked satellite." Taeyang showed them blurry photos of enormous structures taking shape in space. "They're building something big, a fleet maybe, or a colony." Yuna felt her stomach drop. "They're not just controlling Earth. They're using us to build something." "This is what they do," a new voice said. Everyone turned to look at the speaker, a Luxarian soldier who had been freed from the Queen's control 2 weeks ago. His name was difficult for humans to pronounce, so they called him Dal. "The Queen expands her empire by conquering minds, not armies. She finds vulnerable species, addicts them to her pheromones, and uses their resources to build more ships. Then she moves on to the next world." "How many worlds has she done this to?" Nari asked, recording the conversation. "3 that I know of for certain. Probably more before I was born." Dal looked tired and guilty. "I served her for 30 years before I was injured in an accident that damaged my pheromone receptors. It took months for me to realize what had been done to me, to my people. By the time I understood, most of my species was dead or scattered across the empire as slaves." The room fell silent. The weight of what they faced pressed down on everyone. How could they possibly fight something that had destroyed multiple civilizations? "We need to focus on what we can do," Suji said firmly. "We can't save the universe right now, but we can save Earth. Taeyang, you said you found weaknesses in their pheromone distribution network?" "Some," the engineer replied. "The system relies on central processing units in each city. If we could disable them simultaneously, it would create dead zones where people could potentially break free of the influence." "For how long?" Hayon asked. "Hours, maybe. A day at most before they could repair the damage or activate backup systems." "Then we make those hours count," Suji decided. "We've been gathering evidence for months. Video testimonies, scientific data, everything we need to prove what's really happening. If we can get even a fraction of the population to see the truth while they're clear-headed, it might be enough to start a real resistance." Yuna spoke up. "I've been working on something else. A compound that could block the pheromones' effects on human neurochemistry. It's not perfect, and it has side effects. But I've tested it on myself. It works." She rolled up her sleeve to show the injection site. "I gave myself the first dose 3 days ago. Since then, I've been able to watch the Queen's broadcasts without feeling any effect. The pheromones still register in my system, but they don't bind to my receptors." "How many doses can you make?" Hyun asked. "Not many. The ingredients are restricted now. Everything useful has been locked down by Luxarian supply controls. I might be able to make enough for 100 people, maybe 200 if I stretch it." "That's not enough to free Earth," Nari said quietly. "No," Yuna agreed. "But it's enough to protect a strike team. People who can operate in the Queen's presence without being compromised." A plan began to form. It was desperate and dangerous, but it was something. They would create multiple teams armed with Yuna's blocking compound. Each team would target a pheromone distribution center in a different city. The attacks would be coordinated to happen simultaneously during one of the Queen's major broadcasts, when security would be focused on the massive public gatherings. "We're also going to need a way to broadcast our own message," Nari added. "Evidence of what the Luxarians have really done. We'll only have a short window before they shut us down, so it needs to be compelling and clear." Over the next month, they prepared. Yuna worked around the clock to produce the blocking compound, synthesizing it in hidden labs and smuggling the ingredients through a network of sympathetic contacts. Many of these contacts were people who had lost loved ones to the Queen's influence and were willing to risk everything for a chance to free them. Hyun trained the strike teams. Most of the volunteers were military or police who had resisted the pheromones naturally or had received early treatment. They were skilled, determined, and desperate. They knew they were probably going to die. The Luxarians had advanced weapons and loyal human forces to protect their infrastructure, but they had to try. Taiyang mapped out the targets and the timing. Every detail had to be perfect. One team moving too early or too late could compromise the entire operation. One evening, as they reviewed the final plans, Hyun received a message through their secure network. His brother Doyun had been assigned to security detail for the Queen's upcoming Grand Unity celebration, a massive event planned for next month. Doyun would be piloting one of the patrol ships that would guard the airspace around the Queen's vessel. Hyun stared at the information. His brother, completely enthralled, would be part of the force trying to stop them. If the resistance succeeded, Doyun might be freed, but there was also a very real possibility that Hyun would have to go through his brother to reach their objective. "You can't hesitate," Suji told him when she saw his expression. "Not even for family. Too much depends on this." "I know," Hyun said. But knowing did not make it easier. Minji, a doctor who had joined the resistance, had been working with people who were trying to break free of the pheromones' influence. The withdrawal process was brutal. Patients experienced severe depression, anxiety, physical pain, and an overwhelming compulsion to return to the Queen. Some succeeded in breaking free. Others could not endure it and either returned to the Queen's broadcasts or, in a few tragic cases, harmed themselves. "We're going to free millions of people all at once," Minji said during a planning meeting. "Most of them won't have any support system. No medication, no therapy, nothing to help them through withdrawal. A lot of people are going to suffer." "They're already suffering," Yuna replied. "They just don't know it because they're slaves. At least if we succeed, they'll have a choice about their own minds again." The Grand Unity celebration was announced with great fanfare. Queen Valara would appear in person at a massive gathering in Geneva. Billions of people around the world would watch the broadcast. She had promised to share a great gift with humanity, a new level of integration that would bind humans and Luxarians together forever. The Resistance knew what that really meant. The Queen was planning to make her control permanent. Whatever this gift was, it would likely make breaking free impossible. "We moved the day before the celebration," Suji decided. "While they're still setting up, before security is at maximum. It's our best chance." Hyun looked at the faces around the table. These people had become his family over the past 6 months. They were brave, clever, and completely committed. Many of them would not survive what was coming. "One way or another, this ends soon," he said. "Either we break the Queen's hold on Earth or we die trying. But at least we'll die as free humans, not as her slaves." Everyone nodded. They understood the stakes. They understood the odds. And they were ready to fight anyway, because that was what humans did. They fought impossible battles. They refused to surrender their freedom. They pushed back against overwhelming odds simply because they could not do otherwise. It was time to show the Luxarians what humanity was really capable of when pushed to the edge. The resistance had grown beyond what Yun had thought possible. Small cells operated in every major city now, connected through encrypted networks that Tai Yang and his team of hackers maintained. They had hundreds of active members and thousands of sympathizers who provided supplies, information, and safe houses. But it was still a tiny fraction of humanity compared to the billions under the Queen's control. Siwoo, a brilliant hacker who had joined them 3 months ago, sat hunched over his computer in a basement in Busan. He had spent weeks trying to penetrate deeper into the Luxarian networks, and he had finally found something significant. The Queen's biology is not as stable as she makes it appear, Siwoo explained during a video conference with the resistance leadership. His face on the screen looked exhausted but excited. She needs to produce pheromones constantly. It's not a choice for her. It's a biological necessity like breathing is for us. And the process is expensive in terms of energy. She consumes massive amounts of specialized nutrients to maintain production. What happens if she stops? Yuna asked. I found medical records from the Luxarian files. When pheromone production drops, the Queen becomes vulnerable, physically weak, mentally unstable. For her species, the pheromones are also a form of self-regulation. Without them, she would essentially be poisoning herself. Taeyang leaned forward. So if we could somehow disrupt her ability to produce pheromones or force her to overextend that ability, we could weaken her. In theory, Siwoo replied. But I don't know what it would take to do that. The only references I found suggest it happens during extreme stress or illness. Extreme stress, Suji repeated thoughtfully, like facing mass rejection, like suddenly losing control. The implications settled over the group. Their planned attack on the pheromone distribution centers might do more than just free people temporarily. If millions of humans suddenly rejected the Queen all at once, the psychological impact on her might be severe enough to disrupt her biology. We're still moving forward with the original plan, Suji said. But now we know there's a bigger prize. If we play this right, we might not just create a window of freedom. We might break her control permanently. Meanwhile, Yoonji, a former diplomat who had managed to maintain some independence through careful limited exposure to the pheromones, used her remaining access to gather intelligence. She attended official functions, smiled at Luxarian officials, and carefully extracted information while pretending to be a loyal supporter. She had learned that the Grand Unity celebration was more than propaganda. The Queen planned to distribute what she called harmony implants to every human on Earth. These devices would be injected into the bloodstream and would produce pheromones inside the human body itself. People would become dependent on their own internal supply, making withdrawal essentially impossible. It's scheduled to happen in 3 days, Yoonji reported. Distribution centers have already been set up in every city. The Queen will make the announcement at the celebration, and people will line up voluntarily to receive the implants. They think it's a gift. Then we have less time than we thought, Hyun said grimly. We move tomorrow night. Jiwoo, a resistance fighter with experience in demolitions, had been preparing the strike teams for weeks. She was small and unassuming, which made her perfect for reconnaissance missions. She had personally scouted half of the target locations. The pheromone distribution centers are heavily guarded, she told her team. Luxarian soldiers and enthralled human security forces. They have advanced weapons, and they won't hesitate to kill. Our advantage is surprise and numbers. We hit them all at once, overwhelm them before they can coordinate a response. And the broadcast? Nari asked. I'll handle that, Taeyang said. I've found a way to hijack the emergency broadcast system. Once our teams take down the distribution centers, I'll have about 10 minutes before the Luxarians can shut me out. That's your window, Nari. Make it count. Nari had prepared a 20-minute documentary that laid out everything they had learned about the Luxarians. Video testimony from Dal about what the Queen had done to other worlds. Scientific data from Una showing exactly how the pheromones worked. Security footage of Luxarian ships loading Earth's resources for transport. And personal stories from people who had broken free, describing what it was like to lose control of their own minds. 10 minutes is not enough to show everything, Nari said, but it's enough to plant doubt, enough to make people question. That might be all we need. The day before the attack, Hyun visited Minji's medical facility. She had set up several locations around Seoul where people undergoing withdrawal could receive treatment. The facilities were hidden, disguised as abandoned warehouses or storage units. Inside, they looked like field hospitals from a war zone. "We're going to need 10 times this capacity after tomorrow," Minji told him. "Maybe 100 times. I've done everything I can to prepare, but it won't be enough. A lot of people are going to go through withdrawal without any medical support." "Will they survive it?" Hyun asked. "Most of them. Physically. Mentally?" Minji shook her head. "I don't know. Some people will be strong enough. Others will be broken by it. And some will be so desperate to make the pain stop that they'll do anything to get back under the Queen's influence." Hyun thought about his brother. Doyeon had been under the Queen's control for months now. The withdrawal would be severe, but there was no other choice. Freedom had a price, and sometimes that price was pain. That evening, Hyun gathered with the Seoul strike team. There were 12 of them, all injected with Yuna's blocking compound. They wore civilian clothes and carried weapons hidden in bags and cases. Their target was the central pheromone distribution facility in downtown Seoul, housed in what had once been a government building. "Remember," Hyun told them, "many of the people guarding that building are not our enemies. They're victims. They're humans under the Queen's control. We do what we have to do, but we don't kill unless absolutely necessary." "And if it becomes necessary?" one of the fighters asked. "Then we do it," Hyun replied, "because if we fail, there won't be any more chances. This is it. This is our one shot to free Earth." Across the city, across the country, across the world, similar teams prepared for similar missions. Hundreds of resistance fighters, each carrying Yuna's compound in their veins, each ready to die for the chance to break the Queen's hold on humanity. Yuna was not part of any strike team. Her role was different. She had prepared a large quantity of her blocking compound in aerosol form. If the opportunity arose, if they could somehow get close enough to the Queen herself, the compound might be able to neutralize the pheromones in her immediate environment. It was a long shot, but it was another weapon in their limited arsenal. Siwoo monitored Luxarian communications from his hidden location. He would coordinate the timing of the attacks, ensuring that every team moved at exactly the same moment. The slightest delay could give the Luxarians time to respond. "All teams report ready," Siwoo said into his headset. "Attack commences in 60 seconds. Hyun checked his weapon one final time. Around him, his team did the same. They stood in an alley 3 blocks from their target, invisible in the darkness. In cities around the world, other teams stood in similar positions. 30 seconds, Siwoo's voice said. Hyun thought about his parents, who had died when he was young. He thought about Doyeon, who he might have to fight. He thought about all the humans who had no idea they were slaves, who had no idea their entire civilization was being harvested like crops. 10 seconds. He took a deep breath. His hands were steady. His mind was clear. He was terrified and determined in equal measure. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, go. Hyun and his team moved. They ran from the alley, weapons ready, heading toward the distribution center. Around them, the city was quiet. Most people were at home, watching the Queen's nightly broadcast, getting their regular dose of pheromones that kept them docile and obedient. That was about to change. As they approached the building, alarms began to sound. Not at their target, but everywhere. All across the city, all across the world. The Luxarians' sensors were detecting attacks on their infrastructure. The Queen's perfect control was being challenged for the first time. Luxarian soldiers emerged from the building, their weapons charging with an electric hum. Behind them came enthralled human security forces, men and women who would defend their masters without question or hesitation. "For Earth!" Jiwoo shouted and threw the first explosive. The battle for humanity's freedom had begun. The explosion ripped through the front entrance of the distribution center. Luxarian soldiers stumbled back, their formation broken. Hyun's team rushed forward through the smoke and chaos. Gunfire erupted from both sides. The resistance fighters moved with desperate precision, knowing they had minutes at most before reinforcements arrived. Inside the building, the central processing unit hummed with alien technology. It was a massive cylindrical structure that reached from floor to ceiling, pulsing with blue light. Pipes connected it to the city's ventilation system, spreading pheromones through every building, every street, every home. "Plant the charges!" Hyun shouted. Jiwoo ran to the base of the cylinder, pulling explosive charges from her pack. Her hands moved quickly, placing each one with expert care. Behind her, the rest of the team held the doorway against the Luxarian counterattack. An enthralled human security guard charged at Hyun. It was someone he recognized, a sergeant he had worked with years ago. The man's face was twisted with rage, completely devoted to protecting the Queen's property. Hyun had no choice. He fired, and the sergeant went down. "Charges set," Jiwoo called out. "We have 30 seconds. "Everyone out!" Hyun ordered. The team retreated through a side exit as more Luxarian soldiers poured into the building. They ran down back alleys, counting down the seconds. At 0, the entire building shook. The explosion was muffled, but powerful. Inside, the distribution center was being destroyed. All across Seoul, similar explosions echoed through the night. And not just Seoul. Reports came in through Siwoo's network. Tokyo was hit, London was hit, New York, Moscow, Sydney, Cairo. Every major city on Earth was under attack simultaneously. "Broadcasting now," Taeyang's voice came through their earpieces. "The message is going out on every channel." Millions of people who had been watching the Queen's evening broadcast suddenly saw their screens change. Instead of Queen Valara's beautiful face, they saw Nari speaking directly to them. "People of Earth," Nari said, her voice calm but urgent. "What you are about to see is the truth about the Luxarians. Please watch carefully. Your life and your freedom depend on it." The documentary began to play. Evidence, testimony, data. 10 minutes of condensed truth about what had been done to humanity. For people still saturated with pheromones, it would not be enough to break the conditioning. But for those in the dead zones created by the destroyed distribution centers, people who were starting to clear their heads for the first time in months, it was devastating. Hyun's team made it to a safe house and turned on a television. They watched their own broadcast with grim satisfaction. This was what they had fought for, the truth, reaching millions of people simultaneously. But the Luxarian response was swift. Queen Valara herself appeared on all channels, overriding the resistance broadcast. Her presence was overwhelming even through a screen. People who saw her felt the familiar warmth, the comfort of her control. "Do not be afraid," the Queen said, her voice soothing. "You are witnessing a terrorist attack by a small group of disturbed individuals. They seek to destroy the peace and prosperity we have built together. But they will fail. They always fail. Come to the gathering centers. Come to me. I will keep you safe." All across the world, people responded to her call. Even those in the dead zones felt the pull. The pheromone dependency was deep, the withdrawal painful. When the Queen offered relief, millions accepted. But not everyone. For the first time since the Luxarians arrived, a significant number of humans resisted. In Seoul alone, thousands of people stayed in their homes, refusing to answer the Queen's call. Some because they were beginning to understand what had been done to them. others because they were simply too shocked and confused to move. Yuna watched from a different safe house, monitoring the biochemical data her sensors were collecting. The pheromone levels in the dead zones were dropping rapidly. People were starting to metabolize the chemicals out of their systems. In another few hours, they might be clear-headed enough to make real choices. "The Queen is panicking," Siwoo reported. "I'm seeing unusual activity from her ship. They're trying to activate backup pheromone systems, but we destroyed more distribution centers than they can quickly replace." "How long until they restore full coverage?" Suji asked. "Best guess? 6 to 8 hours. But that's if everything goes smoothly for them. We could disrupt their repairs if we hit them again." "No," Suji decided. "We don't have the resources for another coordinated attack. We need to use this window for something else." Yunji had an idea. "The Grand Unity celebration is still scheduled for tomorrow. The Queen will appear in person in Geneva. Security will be tight, but she'll be vulnerable. If we could somehow reach her, disrupt her pheromone production at close range." "That's a suicide mission," Hyun said. "Everything we've done so far has been a suicide mission," Yunji replied. "But we're still alive, and we're winning. Look at what's happening out there." For the first time in 6 months, humans are questioning the Queen. Some are even defying her directly. "We've created a fracture in her control. If we push hard enough at that fracture point, the whole thing might shatter." The plan came together quickly. A small team would infiltrate the celebration. They would carry Yuna's aerosol compound and anything else that might disrupt the Queen's biology. The goal was not to kill her, though that would be a bonus. The goal was to make her lose control in front of billions of witnesses. "If she falters, if she shows weakness, it will shatter the illusion of her perfection," Yuna explained. "The pheromones work partly because people believe in her absolutely. Doubt could cascade through the enthralled population. It might not free everyone, but it could free enough." Doyun's patrol ship flew over Geneva, part of the massive security detail protecting the Queen's appearance at the celebration. Inside the cockpit, Hyun's brother felt nothing but devotion and purpose. He would protect the Queen with his life. He would destroy any threat to her safety. These thoughts felt natural to him, right? He could not remember a time when he had wanted anything else. Below him, 1 million people gathered in the plaza where the Queen would soon appear. They sang songs of unity and love. Children wore harmony bands that glowed with soft light. Everyone was happy, peaceful, content. This was the future the Queen had promised. This was paradise. But at the edge of the crowd, 50 resistance fighters wearing Yuna's blocking compound moved into position. They carried hidden weapons and aerosol dispensers. They knew they would probably die in the next hour. They knew that even if they succeeded, the Luxarians might retaliate against Earth with military force rather than pheromones. They did not care. Some things were worth dying for. Freedom was one of them. Hyun was among them. He looked up at the patrol ships overhead and wondered if his brother was up there. He hoped Doyun would survive what was coming. He hoped that when this was over, they could be brothers again instead of enemies. The Queen's vessel descended from the sky, majestic and terrible. The crowd roared with joy. People wept at the sight of her. The ship landed on the elevated platform at the center of the plaza. The door opened and Queen Valara emerged. She was more beautiful in person than on any screen. Her presence was like a physical force, pressing against everyone who saw her. Even with the blocking compound, Hyun felt the pull. He could only imagine what it was like for people without protection. "My beloved humans," the Queen began, her voice carrying across the plaza through unseen speakers. "Today we take the final step in our union. Today you receive my greatest gift." Behind her, Luxarian soldiers wheeled out containers filled with harmony implants, millions of tiny devices that would make the Queen's control permanent. "These will free you from all doubt, all fear, all pain," the Queen continued. "You will become truly united with me and with each other. You will know peace eternal." The crowd surged forward eagerly. People pushed and shoved in their desire to be among the first to receive the implants. Hyun and his team began to move. They pushed through the crowd toward the platform. Security forces noticed them. Alarms began to sound. Luxarian soldiers raised their weapons. "Now!" Hyun shouted. 50 resistance fighters activated their aerosol dispensers simultaneously. A fine mist spread through the crowd, carrying Yuna's compound. It would not affect the Queen directly, not from this distance, but it would create a bubble of clear air around the platform, disrupting the pheromone saturation. People near the front of the crowd suddenly stumbled, their expressions changing from joy to confusion. The chemical fog cleared from their minds. They looked around and saw where they were, what they had been about to do. Horror replaced devotion. "No!" one woman gasped, backing away from the platform. "No! What am I doing here? What is this?" Others began to echo her confusion and fear. The panic spread like wildfire. Within seconds, thousands of people were trying to flee the plaza. The orderly crowd became a chaotic mob. Queen Valara's expression changed. For the first time, humans saw her lose composure. She looked shocked, then angry. Her skin began to glow brighter as her body ramped up pheromone production, trying to reassert control. But it was too much, too fast. Siwoo had been right. Overproducing pheromones to combat mass rejection was straining her biology. The Queen staggered, catching herself on the railing of the platform. The entire world was watching. Billions of people saw their perfect queen show weakness, saw her stumble, saw her lose control. The fracture in her power became a break, then a shatter. All across Earth, people who had been absolutely devoted suddenly felt doubt creeping in. If the Queen could be wrong about her own safety, what else might she be wrong about? Hyun fought through the chaos, trying to reach the platform. Luxarian soldiers blocked his path. He fired. They fired back. People screamed and ran in all directions. It was madness. The chaos in Geneva spread across the world through live broadcasts. People who had been watching the Grand Unity celebration with joy and anticipation now saw their queen struggling, saw humans running from her in fear and confusion. The image of Queen Valara stumbling on her platform, her perfect composure cracked, became the most watched moment in human history. But the Queen recovered quickly. She straightened, her expression hardening with determination. Her skin stopped glowing as she brought her biology back under control. When she spoke, her voice carried the full weight of her fury. "You dare reject me?" she said, and the words hit like physical blows. Even through screens, even across thousands of miles, people felt the force of her anger. "You dare to fight against paradise?" Luxarian soldiers moved with lethal efficiency through the panicking crowd. Resistance fighters fell under concentrated fire. Hyun dove behind a barrier as energy weapons scorched the air above him. He could see the platform, could see the Queen standing there like an avenging goddess. "We need to get closer," he shouted into his comm unit. "The aerosol isn't strong enough from this distance." "Working on it," Jiwoo's voice crackled back. She was somewhere in the chaos with a heavy explosive charge. If she could reach the base of the platform, she might be able to bring it down entirely. Above the plaza, Doyun received orders to engage the hostile targets below. His fingers moved across the controls without hesitation. He had no doubt, no question. The Queen commanded, and he obeyed. His weapons locked onto the resistance fighters scattered through the crowd. In that moment, something unexpected happened. Doyun's targeting system identified one of the fighters. The computer displayed a name and profile. Hyun, his brother. For a fraction of a second, something flickered in Doyun's mind. A memory of childhood. A feeling of connection that existed before the Queen. The pheromones in his system pushed it away, but not before his finger hesitated on the trigger. That hesitation saved Hyun's life. The shot that should have killed him instead struck the barrier he was hiding behind. Hyun looked up, saw his brother's ship, and understood. Even from this distance, even under the Queen's complete control, some part of Do-yoon had resisted. "Do-yoon!" Hyun whispered. Then louder, into his comm unit. "Si-woo, we need to jam the Luxarian communications. Cut the Queen off from her forces." "I can try," Si-woo's voice came back. "But their encryption is strong. I'll need time." "We don't have time!" In her command center, Yuna watched the battle unfold on multiple screens. The aerosol compound had worked better than expected. Thousands of people in Geneva were now experiencing sudden withdrawal. Medical facilities were being overwhelmed. But the compound had also revealed something crucial. When people broke free and rejected the Queen simultaneously, it caused her genuine physical distress. "It's the feedback," Yuna said, understanding dawning. "The pheromones don't just affect humans. They affect her too. She's connected to everyone under her control. When they all reject her at once, the psychological shock disrupts her biology." "So we need more people to break free simultaneously?" Suji asked. "As many as possible. The withdrawal will be terrible, but if we can coordinate it, if we can get millions of people to reject her in the same moment," Yuna trailed off, thinking quickly. "We need to distribute the compound globally, get it into the atmosphere." "We don't have enough," Minji pointed out. "You said you could only make a few hundred doses." "Not as individual injections. But if we aerosolize the entire supply and released it at high altitude, let the jet streams carry it around the world." Yuna pulled up weather patterns on her computer. "It would be diluted. It would only give people a few minutes of clarity. But a few minutes might be enough." "Enough for what?" Nari asked. "Enough for billions of people to realize what's been done to them. Enough for them all to reject the Queen at the same instant. That kind of psychological shock might be enough to break her completely." The plan was insane. They would need to get the compound onto an aircraft capable of reaching the upper atmosphere. They would need to time the release for maximum global distribution, and they would need to do it while the Queen's forces were hunting them everywhere. "I can fly it," a new voice said. Everyone turned to see Dal, the freed Luxarian soldier. "I know their patrol routes. I know how to bypass their security. If you can get the compound to a suitable aircraft, I can get it into the air." In Geneva, the battle had turned against the resistance. Most of their fighters were dead or wounded. Jiwoo had been captured before she could detonate her explosive. The Queen's soldiers were systematically eliminating the remaining threats. Hyun was pinned down with 3 other survivors. Energy blasts tore through the barriers around them. In another minute, they would be dead. Then the sky lit up with explosions. Not Luxarian weapons, human weapons. Aircraft streaked overhead, firing missiles at the Luxarian soldiers on the platform. More ships appeared, broadcasting resistance messages. "All free humans, this is Commander Suji," her voice boomed across the plaza. "The Queen has controlled us through biochemical warfare. She is not our friend. She is our enslaver. Fight back. Protect your minds. Protect your world." The broadcast was being jammed almost instantly, but the damage was done. The humans who had broken free from the pheromones in the plaza started fighting back. They grabbed weapons from fallen soldiers. They helped the remaining resistance fighters. For the first time, humans and Luxarians were in open combat. Queen Valara watched this rebellion with growing alarm. This was not supposed to happen. Other species had been more compliant, had given in faster. Humans were proving more resistant than she had expected. "Activate the emergency protocol," she commanded her soldiers. "Release the maximum dosage. I want every human on this planet sedated immediately." But that was exactly what the resistance had been hoping for. Siwoo had been monitoring Luxarian communications, waiting for that specific command. The moment the Queen gave the order, he triggered his hack. The pheromone distribution network received modified instructions. Instead of increasing output, it shut down completely. Every remaining distribution center across the planet went offline simultaneously. For the first time in 6 months, Earth's atmosphere began to clear. Tai Yang had worked for weeks to make the hack possible. He had planted backdoors in Luxarian systems while pretending to be a loyal collaborator. Now those backdoors activated, cascading through the network, locking out even the Queen's override commands. Pheromone distribution is offline globally, Siwoo reported triumphantly. It'll take them hours to restore it manually. Those hours would be agony for billions of people as they went into sudden withdrawal. But they would also be humanity's best chance. Dal flew a stolen transport aircraft to the upper atmosphere. In the cargo bay, containers of Yuna's compound waited to be released. She had given him everything she had left, every last drop of the blocking agent. It was not much in the grand scheme of things. Diluted across the entire world's atmosphere, each person would breathe in only the tiniest amount. But even that tiny amount would give them a moment of clarity, a moment to see what had been done to them, a moment to choose. Approaching release altitude, Dal reported. 30 seconds. On the ground, Minji prepared her medical teams for the flood of patients they were about to receive. Millions of people entering withdrawal simultaneously. The casualties would be enormous, but the alternative was eternal slavery. 20 seconds! Nari broadcast one final message to the world, fighting through the Luxarian jamming. People of Earth, you are about to experience something terrible. You will hurt. You will be confused and afraid. But you will also, for the first time in months, be able to think for yourself. When that moment comes, I need you to do one thing. Reject the Queen. Reject her completely. Say no. Think no. Mean it with every fiber of your being. All of us, together, at the same time. That's how we win. That's how we take back our world. 10 seconds. Hyun fought his way onto the platform. Luxarian soldiers blocked his path, but human fighters who had just broken free came to his aid. Together they pushed forward. The Queen saw him coming and smiled cruelly. You cannot win, she said. I have conquered civilizations far older than yours. You are nothing. Maybe, Hyun replied, raising his weapon. But we're nothing that refuses to stay conquered. 5 seconds. Release now. Yuna's voice came through Dal's comm. He pressed the button. The cargo bay doors opened. Aerosol compound sprayed into the upper atmosphere, caught by jet streams that would carry it around the planet. It would take hours to spread completely, but the effect began almost immediately. As the compound reached the lower atmosphere and people breathed it in, their minds cleared. For just a few minutes, the pheromone receptors in their brains were blocked. The artificial devotion faded. The false love evaporated, and billions of people all at once realized what had been done to them. The psychological shock was immense. People collapsed in the streets, screaming in horror and rage. Families looked at each other and wondered what they had become. Leaders who had surrendered their nations to alien control broke down in tears. But most importantly, they rejected the Queen. In millions of languages, in billions of minds, humanity said no. The feedback hit Queen Valara like a physical blow. She staggered, fell to her knees. Her skin lost its glow. Her eyes, which had always been so confident and commanding, showed fear for the first time. Impossible, she gasped. This is impossible. Hyun stood over her, his weapon aimed at her head. Nothing is impossible. You should have learned that before you tried to enslave humanity. The Queen looked up at him, and in that moment she was not a conqueror or a goddess. She was a parasite that had finally encountered a host it could not control. Please, she whispered, I need them. I need their devotion. Without it, I am nothing. Then be nothing, Hyun said. We'd all prefer that. He did not pull the trigger. He did not need to. Queen Valara's biology was collapsing under the weight of universal rejection. Her pheromone production had spiraled out of control, poisoning her own system. She fell forward, convulsing, her body shutting down. Queen Valara collapsed on the platform in Geneva, her body racked with convulsions. The billions watching around the world saw their goddess, their perfect ruler, reduced to a trembling figure on the ground. The illusion of her invincibility shattered completely. Luxarian soldiers nearby dropped their weapons and fell to their knees, not in surrender, but in shock. Their expressions mirrored the confusion and horror that humans had experienced moments before. As the Queen's pheromone production failed, they too were freed from her control. "She enslaved us too," one Luxarian soldier said in broken English, tears streaming down his face. "We never knew. For generations we never knew." Dal landed his aircraft and rushed to the plaza. He found his fellow Luxarians in states of breakdown, some crying, others screaming, many simply staring into space as they processed the magnitude of what had been done to them. Their entire civilization had been built on the Queen's biochemical control. Their history, their culture, their very identity had been shaped by her pheromones. "Listen to me," Dal said, gathering them. "I know what you are feeling. I have been where you are. The pain is real, but you are free now. We are all free." Above the plaza, Doyun's fighter ship had stopped moving. Inside the cockpit, Hyun's brother sat motionless, his hands frozen on the controls. The orders in his head had simply vanished. One moment he had been absolutely certain of his purpose, devoted to protecting the Queen above all else. The next moment, that certainty was gone, leaving only questions and horror. "What have I done?" Doyun whispered. He looked at his hands, which had been ready to kill his own brother. "Oh God, what have I done?" His comm unit crackled. "Doyun, are you there?" It was Hyun's voice. "Brother." Doyun's voice broke. "Hyun, I nearly killed you." "I would have killed you without hesitation. She made me into something I'm not." "I know, it's not your fault. Can you land?" "I need to see you." "I don't know if I deserve—" "Land the ship, Doyun. We'll figure everything else out later." Around the world, similar scenes played out. Families reunited. People who had been enemies an hour ago embraced as they realized they had both been victims. The withdrawal symptoms were severe, millions of people experiencing pain, nausea, confusion, and overwhelming emotional distress. But they were thinking clearly for the first time in months. Minji's medical facilities were immediately overwhelmed. Every hospital, every clinic, every shelter was packed with people needing help. The psychological trauma was immense. People had lost months of their lives. They had done things under the Queen's control that horrified them now. Some had betrayed loved ones. Others had helped implement policies that hurt their own communities. "We're going to need years of therapy," Minji told Yuna. "An entire planet suffering from the same trauma. This is unprecedented." "But they're alive," Yuna replied, "and they're free. That's what matters." The Queen's condition deteriorated rapidly. Her body had been designed to produce pheromones constantly, to maintain control over vast populations. When that control was suddenly rejected by billions of beings simultaneously, the feedback destroyed her biology from the inside. Human doctors tried to stabilize her, not out of compassion, but because she possessed knowledge that humanity needed. "Will she survive?" Suji asked. "For now," one of the doctors replied. "But her body is failing. Without the constant production and reception of pheromones, her systems are shutting down. She was never meant to exist without her empire." In the days that followed, the truth about the Luxarian Empire emerged. Teams of freed Luxarian soldiers, led by Dal, provided testimony and opened their databases. The Queen had conquered 5 other species over the course of 300 years. Each civilization had been harvested for resources and labor, their people addicted to her pheromones and used until they were no longer profitable. "What happened to the other species?" Nari asked as she documented everything for her report. "Some died out completely, worked to extinction," Dal replied, his voice heavy with guilt. "Others were scattered across the empire, their cultures destroyed. A few small populations survived in remote areas where the Queen's influence did not reach, but their civilizations are gone." "We need to find them," Hyun said. "The survivors. We need to tell them they're free too." The Luxarian ships orbiting Earth became a point of negotiation. The freed Luxarian soldiers had no interest in continuing the Empire. Many wanted to help undo the damage that had been done. But the ships contained technology humanity needed, resources that had been stolen from Earth. "Take it all back," Dal said. "Everything we took from your world. We will help you rebuild. It is the least we can do." Taiyang and his team worked with Luxarian engineers to dismantle the pheromone distribution network. Every transmitter, every harmony band, every piece of technology designed to spread the Queen's influence was destroyed. They could not risk anyone ever using that technology again. "What about the Queen herself?" Siwoo asked. "She's still alive, barely, but alive. What do we do with her?" It was a question without an easy answer. Some wanted her executed for her crimes. Others wanted her kept alive for study, to understand her biology so that nothing like this could ever happen again. Still others, surprisingly, felt pity for her. "She's a victim too, in a way," one philosopher noted during a broadcast debate. "Her entire species evolved to control others through pheromones. She never had a choice about what she was. The real question is whether we want to be the kind of species that executes prisoners, even ones who committed genocide." The debate raged for weeks. Eventually, a decision was made. The Queen would be kept in a secured medical facility, her pheromone production permanently suppressed through continuous treatment. She would live, but she would never again have the ability to control others. Teams of scientists would study her biology, not to replicate it, but to develop better defenses against it. When Hyun visited her in the facility, he found her diminished. The glowing skin was gone. The commanding presence was absent. She looked small and fragile in her medical bed. "You will kill me eventually," the Queen said. Her voice, once so musical and compelling, was now flat and weak. "Your kind always kills what it fears." "Maybe," Hyun replied. "Or maybe we'll prove we're better than you gave us credit for. We're not predictable. That's what you never understood about humans. We don't all think the same way. We don't all want the same things. That's our strength." "It is also your weakness," the Queen said. "You will fight among yourselves. You will never be as unified as my empire was." "You're right. We will fight. We'll disagree. We'll make mistakes. But we'll do it as free beings making our own choices. That's worth any amount of conflict." 3 months after the Queen fell, Earth held a memorial service for those who had died in the resistance. Thousands had given their lives to free humanity. Jiwoo, who survived despite her capture, stood at the memorial wall, looking at the names of fallen comrades. "We won," she said quietly. "Why does it not feel better?" "Because winning cost us a lot," Nari replied. She stood next to Jiwoo, her camera off for once. "We lost people we loved. We lost time we can never get back." "Winning doesn't erase the pain. But it makes the pain meaningful," Suji added. She had retired from active leadership of the resistance but still attended these gatherings. "They died so that others could be free. That matters." Yuna spent her time developing treatments for the long-term effects of pheromone exposure. Some people had lasting damage to their neurochemistry. Others struggled with the memories of what they had done while controlled. The psychological scars would take generations to heal. But there was also hope. Humanity had faced an enemy that had destroyed 5 other civilizations, and humanity had won. Not through superior technology or military might, but through stubbornness, creativity, and an absolute refusal to submit. Doyon and Hyun worked together to rebuild Earth's defense systems. The Luxarian ships had been converted to human use, their weapons repurposed to protect rather than conquer. Other freed species across the galaxy were contacted and offered aid. "We cannot undo what was done to you," Hyun said in a broadcast to the other survivor populations. "But we can help you rebuild. We can make sure this never happens to anyone else." 1 year after liberation, Earth sent out its first deep space mission, a ship crewed by both humans and freed Luxarians, carrying supplies and technology to the scattered remnants of conquered civilizations. They would spend years traveling the galaxy, finding survivors, helping them rebuild. Dal commanded the mission. Before he left, he met with the core resistance members one last time. "Thank you," he said simply, "for freeing us, for showing us what we could be without the Queen." "Thank you for helping us win," Hyun replied. "We could not have done it without you." "What will you do now?" Dal asked. "Rebuild, recover, make sure we learn from this." Hyun looked at his brother, who stood next to him. "Make sure we never forget what it cost to be free." As Dal's ship left Earth's orbit, Nari stood in her rebuilt news studio and delivered her final report on the Luxarian occupation. 1 year ago, humanity faced extinction of our independence and identity, she said to her audience. We were conquered without realizing we were in a war. We were enslaved while believing we were free. But when we finally understood what was happening, we fought back. Not because we were the strongest or the smartest, but because we refused to accept that our fate was already decided. She paused, looking directly at the camera. The Luxarians learned something about humanity that they had not discovered in any other species they conquered. We are stubborn. We are contrary. We do not do what we are told, even when it would be easier, especially when it would be easier. That stubbornness, that fundamental human refusal to submit, saved us all. Today, Earth is free. We are scarred, we are healing, but we are ours again. And we will make sure that no other world suffers what we suffered, because that is what humans do. We survive, we persist, we protect. We are humanity, and we do not yield. In the medical facility, Queen Valara watched the broadcast. She understood now what she had failed to understand before. Humans were not like the other species she had conquered. They were individually weak, but collectively unstoppable. They could be controlled for a time, but never forever. They would always fight back eventually. She had made the mistake of believing that because she could control human minds, she had conquered the human spirit. But the spirit could not be controlled with pheromones. It could only be temporarily suppressed, waiting for its moment to break free. Hyun stood on a hill outside Seoul looking at the city lights. Yuna stood next to him. They had both been changed by what they had endured. The weight of what they had done, the people they had lost, the trauma they carried, it would never truly leave them. "Do you think we'll be okay?" Yuna asked. "Eventually," Hyun replied. "It'll take time, but we're human. We're good at surviving things that should destroy us." "Is that what we are now? Survivors?" "We're more than that. We're proof that freedom matters more than comfort, that independence is worth fighting for, even when the fight seems impossible." He turned to look at her. "We showed the universe what humanity really is, not our technology or our weapons, our refusal to give up, our absolute stubbornness in the face of impossible odds." "HFY," Yuna said with a slight smile. "What?" "Humanity. Fuck yeah. It's something I saw online, people using it to describe what we did, how we won against the Luxarians." Hyun laughed for the first time in months. Yeah, that sounds about right. They stood together in silence, watching their free world shine in the darkness. Behind them, humanity rebuilt. Ahead of them, the future waited. Uncertain and challenging and entirely their own. Queen Valara had learned too late what every would-be conqueror of humanity must eventually learn. Humans can be beaten. They can be controlled. They can even be broken. But they will never, ever stay down. They will always find a way to rise again. And when they do, they rise together, stubborn and contrary and absolutely free. The Luxarian Empire was finished. But humanity's story was just beginning.